Hello, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining in. I see people are still clicking in. We'll just give 5 more minutes or maybe just a couple of minutes, and then we will start. Meanwhile, if we can say hello, that'd be great. Hey, Sohini, thank you so much. It's great having you here. Hello, Shubham. Hi, Coffee. I see there are about 25 people that we have. Um, all right, I think it's already 3 minutes past 8. Let's just begin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you're having a great Friday. If not, I'm sure things will get brighter over the weekend. I am super excited to welcome you all to today's webinar on how data and generative AI can give you marketing content that speaks for you. We have many marketers here today, and we'll all agree that if there's a single application domain that has witnessed the biggest buzz around generative AI, it has been content marketing. Anybody today with a device connected to the internet can generate emails, blogs, social media posts, and whatnot using AI models via ChatGPT, Cloud Chat, Microsoft Copilot, and even Yarnit and a bunch of other available tools. There are a few amongst us that might even paint a doomsday scenario. The question that arises is, however, have the fundamentals of good content changed? Good research, optimization for search engines, domain authority, focus, audience centricity. These characteristics still remain most impactful when it comes to good content, irrespective whether the content is created by a human being or generated by an AI model. That being said, there is no denying that there are challenges with AI generated content, and I'm not even talking about the ethical ones. If we were to focus on the biggest criticisms of AI generated content, what can they be? It can be that one, the content is too generic. It's like one size fits all, and sometimes it tends to be factually incorrect. Does that mean that using AI for content is just a passing fad? No, not at all. To overcome these challenges, researchers and practitioners have been advocating the use of data. By using data effectively, you can leverage AI to create content that is unique, speaks in your language, and is of value to your audience. I'm Abhinav. I look after AI at Yarnit. And I have today with me my two good friends and my co founders at Yarnit, JD Jyotirmay. who is the CEO, and Akash, who heads product. Now, to set the agenda for the next 60 minutes, where we will delve deeper into this topic of using data to make AI better for marketing. We'll begin with JD talking about the importance of using data and what kind of data should be used with generative AI models. Following that, I will spend some time on the how. It will be like a double click on the techniques of using data with some examples. And then Akash will wrap it up with talking about how Yarnet leverages data to drive content outcomes. During the course of this webinar, please feel free to post your questions and comments, and we will address them in the last quarter of this hour. So, with that, let us begin, and I'll yield the stage to JD. JD, please enlighten us. What is all this chatter about data? What is this?
Thank you so much, Abhinav, for the introduction. Lovely introduction, in fact. Folks, good morning, good evening. Thanks for joining in. Before we get started, and talk more about why data is so important for generative AI, why is it so important about personalized content marketing, I wanted to go back to discussing the why, right? And at Yarnet, we have been building this AI marketing platform very focused on enterprise marketers, very focused on content marketing. And if you look at our own journey from the last 10 to 12 months, from our version 1 to the version that we are launching next week, it has only gone up and up, better and better. And the only common factor there has been our capability to integrate data, infuse data into generation, and how do we sort of better the outcomes with that, right? Of course, in this journey, our customers have been very, very helpful. They have given us very candid feedback. They have been honest about what challenges they are facing with Garnet or otherwise, right? Now that is our story, right? But we wanted to sort of take a more global approach to this, understand what challenges customers are facing today. But even before that, let's start with a layer where exactly today you see AI being used in content marketing. Now, broadly, if you see, there are the 6 different use cases, right? As in, all of you who have been creating content for marketing purposes, these are very familiar use cases. You are doing it for writing blogs, you are doing it for creating social media posts. A lot of folks are using it to find new ideas. Some of them are using it to sort of power their sales workflows. And of course, who doesn't love headlines? This is the most popular use case, where you're trying to find a headline for your next blog post, next social media post. And then there are some more nuanced use cases where you are creating content for your sales material, landing page for your campaigns, etc., etc. So what is the challenge? What is the challenge? Look, as in, if you look at broadly across our customer groups, and when we spoke to marketers across the globe, there are 4 core challenges. The first one being poor content quality. Now, if you look at content quality and poor content quality, what does that mean? When we spoke to marketers and tried to understand a little bit more about it, we realized they're talking about, hey, we need to sort of prompt, reprompt, edit, multiple times edit to get to the version that can be production ready, right? That's challenge number 1. If you look at challenge number 2, it's about information accuracy. And trust me, and this is a guess, but I think it's a legitimate guess when I say all of us in this webinar must have tried doing this with all the right bots that we have, where we ask the chat bot saying, give us stats, give us facts, and it cooked up a fact which doesn't exist, right? We all have been there. The third one is around the content being generic, and this is a complaint often that you would see around AI generated content. It didn't understand the context. My field is super niche. It is true because all the LLMs have their own inherent memory, and wherever the domain is niche, where the literature itself is very sparse, there are good enough chances that the LLM would not have the context for it, and therefore would generate something which it can make it up or it might hallucinate. The fourth challenge is around our ability to understand, or AI's ability to understand, the brand style and voice. You might have generated something and you realize that it probably doesn't align with your brand style, with the voice that you have, the choice of words that you have in your organization, The words that you don't like in your communication, you probably have included that. Now, if you see broadly, these four challenges speak to the output, right? But what about the outcomes? As a marketer, we are focused on outcomes. We are looking at whether it is aiding to my engagement, whether I'm getting better conversions, whether leads are coming away or not. When you look at outcomes and the challenge of, all the challenges that we saw from the output standpoint, how does that relay into outcomes? Publisher penalty. In the last 3 to 4 months, there is a lot of discourse around whether Google will sort of penalize our content. What if, we are generating content with AI? Will it rank any lesser on Google? Look, there is very little truth into that hypothesis, right? And the reason being, if your content is not of high quality, if it doesn't, it doesn't have the depth of the context, if it doesn't have the depth of the domain, there are anyway very lesser chances that it will rank well. The problem complicates if you're trying to monetize that same content, and that is where probably a lot of these publishers would not approve your content or help you monetize that content. The second and the most important promise of AI, right? Can we increase the time or rather decrease the time to market, right? The promise of AI around is you can literally launch your campaigns within next to 3 4 hours. And there is a lot of advertisements that you'd see coming from social media influencers who are backing that claim as well, where you can literally launch a campaign with AI in 3 to 4 hours. Now that's true, but imagine you are writing a copy, you're writing an ad, and it was not compliant. It got disapproved by the publisher. What happens then, right? You write it again, right? You submit it again, but the entire workflow now is extended by another 24 hours. So that, having poor quality generation where you need editing, where it can land into problems of approval, might delay our time to market. The third one, look, everything that we do is around customer engagement. If you look at content marketing as a concept, it's largely around creating the awareness, the education among our customers. Now, what happened since ChatGPT? We got this magic wand and we got into this factory mode where we started taking our wish list. Here's the content, next is the content, the other content. But we kind of moved away from the part that we need to understand the customer needs a little better. We need to understand what we can solve for them and therefore create content. What has happened, a lot of us have been able to create good content, but at the same time, it has not yielded the same kind of customer engagement. If you ask me, across all the challenges, whether it is output, whether it's outcome, I think the answer lies in data, right? If we are able to pair our generation with data, you know, that we have seen significant amount of change, right? Now that takes me to my next section, right? Where what are those data sources? What are those resources that we can pair with Gen AI to ensure that the content that we are creating is personalized, is contextual? Now, broadly, if you see, there are three different data sources. One, company knowledge. And we often undermine this, right? As in we discount the fact that we are sitting on a treasure trove of data. It's all legacy information that you have, what your brands have done, the case studies that you have solved, what you have done in the past, what you're doing now. So there is a lot that you can use just from your company knowledge. The second source of information that we categorize as the next bucket is customer generated knowledge. Any data that you're generating of customer, right? Whether it is a review, there is a feedback, it is your customer conversations, so on and so forth. The third one is external knowledge. Of course, it doesn't have to do with what you have done, but it is certainly related to your domain. It is certainly related to your customers and the moments that they are interacting with, right? Now let's get deeper into each one of them and try to understand what exactly are these data sources and how they kind of aid to our content generation process. Within company knowledge, if you look at one, global assets, right? If you look at global assets within a company, if you are a public company, you might be or reporting to the markets, you will have your annual reports, your SEC filings, your earning call transcript, your corporate deck, or your startup pitch deck. That can become the universal knowledge system for a lot of these AI systems. It can create that peripheral knowledge on which now every generation could be based. Slightly more nuanced would be your product assets, where if you can feed this information, whether it is a sales collateral, whether it is a product fact sheet, whether it is a data sheet, whether these are FAQs. And a lot of SaaS companies, product companies, e-com companies would have this information, right? Where you're discussing your shipping policy, your return policy, right? Can you feed those documents to the generative AI system? Then comes your sales assets, right? Every sales guy would have their own decks, their battle cards, sales call transcripts, their conversation, the objections, how they handle those objections with the customer. Those are gold mine, right? And the last one is to go back to the problem statement which we are talking about, as in how do you ensure that the AI system understands your brand, understands the tone, the tenor, the choice of words, how you want your communication to be, how you want you to be perceived by your customers. Now, all of these sources and how we can use these sources and what do that do, right? As in, if you look at use cases, of course, you can ground the AI with a lot of company information, and therefore the generation becomes contextual. The second part is around compliances. If you are in an enterprise, you're worried about whether everything that you're doing in terms of content is ticking the right boxes, taking your brand compliance layer or not. You can certainly ensure that. And the last one is repurposing. Everything on the left hand side that we have discussed in terms of sources, imagine how they themselves can become a huge source of creating content. Can we sort of feed this to the AI and repurpose smaller nuggets of information, blog, social media posts, product descriptions? All of that can be created and made much more contextual. Next, go to the next one. This is a very interesting one because if you look at the data that we get, the knowledge that we get of our customers, you know, you there's nothing better than this. And what are the larger buckets of information that you can capture? Of course, customer support interactions, where you're looking at customer chats, support tickets, call recordings, online reviews, again, publicly available, where you can look at your own feedback that the customer have given, the social mentions. Now, if you're looking at these two data sets, right, how do if you are able to sort of plug that to the generative AI system, how can they aid to generations? If you look at the three core benefits that comes out of this, the first one goes back to content planning, right? And remember, we were talking about how can you create a calendar, how can you create a schedule, which which can literally speak to your audience, right? And looking at customer pain points, the conversation can actually help you create content or find content ideas which are relevant for your customer. You can certainly refine your FAQs, your support documents, so that you're addressing the pain points that they have, and the broader context of it can be still grounded with the context that you have. The last data source that I want to discuss is the external data source, right? Now, SERP, which is search engine results, most asked questions, these have been conventional sources when it comes to SEO ranking, finding the right keyword, creating the topic cluster. How do you use this data, right? Can you use this data to further contextualize your AI systems? The second could be syndicated in social feeds. Now, this feed could be a news feed, this could be a research, this could be social media. And if you're companies which are heavy on domain, let's say, if you are focusing on pharma, can you pair it with clinical trials data? If you are, if you're looking at scientific information, can you pair it with a source like PubMed, right? Where it can certainly learn of the latest and greatest and more nuanced data about your domain. The third is website, where you're looking at, websites of your competitors, analysts that you follow, or publications that you follow. Now, how do you sort of aid all of that into the AI system so that it is able to solve for certain use cases? The reason you see SEO, I know for a lot of marketers, even we have tried our hands, where we are asking the question to LLM and saying, hey, generate this SEO qualified article, plug in this 3, 4 keywords, and ensure that it is, SEO enriched. It doesn't work like that, right? Because SEO is a separate data. You need to understand the search volumes, what people are asking, what are the search queries that you are getting, and therefore you optimize it. So just asking an LLM or a generative AI system to generate a SEO qualified article might be slightly, less optimal or suboptimal. Content idea generation, right? of course, you need to look at what's happening. What is that people are talking about? How do you capture the moments better? Can you work with the recency of information? Something happened 30 seconds before this, an hour before this. Can you tap onto that moment and create content which is much more recent, which is much more fresh, right? And the last one, the moment you add external information, it adds to the credibility of your content, right? We were talking about the inherent knowledge, and there will always be a lag when it comes to LLMs and their knowledge corpus. But if you're able to pair it with recent informations like what we're discussing right now, right, you can certainly add to the recency. Folks, these are three different broad categories of data sources. But we need to understand, has the technology evolved? And if it has, how do we sort of access these data sources and pair it with generative AI systems? I don't think there's anybody better than Abhinav. Abhinav, why don't you sort of take that up?
Well, thank you so much, GD. Those were some great insights. Like I was thinking, like, what is the significance of data? What kind of data is important when you're using generative AI models? I hope everybody found it insightful. And folks, please keep your questions, comments coming in. What I will do in the next few minutes is build upon this data story and try to demystify how all this is done and what has been the evolution of techniques that we have witnessed over the last 12 to 18 months. Now, let me say at the onset that these AI models, or what are commonly known as large language models or LLMs, they are great stores of data in themselves. Like if I ask an LLM, like the one powering ChatGPT, a question, like what is the most famous TV commercial made by Apple? It gives me that information. It talks about the 1984, the famous commercial, Super Bowl, Ridley Scott, George Orwell. It knows about all of these things. And not only that, as a marketer, if I want to use this information to write, say, a post on LinkedIn, I can ask the LLM to do that too, and the LLM will come up with a decent post. That's because LLMs are masters of linguistic ability. you know Now it may have become commonplace, but the first time I saw this unprecedented text generation ability, it was nothing short of magic to me. So in LLMs, as a marketer, I have something that can write great pieces of content for me. It is like a copywriter, but there is a slight problem. If you rely too much on the LLM for factually accurate information, you might be setting yourself up for disappointment. Why is that? Because LLMs are prone to generating false facts, and that too with confidence. Like I asked for a blog on 2023 Cricket World Cup finals. It has written a very coherent, well structured, articulate piece of content, but it's all wrong. I mean, it says India versus Pakistan, Virat Kohli's century. That's all incorrect, but it lies with so much confidence. We call such behavior peculiar to LLMs as hallucinations. The other big shortcoming is that they also have a knowledge cutoff date. They are not always up to date with the latest information, and that is inherent to the technology itself. So if I ask for some event that has happened now in 2024, it'll tell me that, boss, I don't have this information. Please look somewhere else. And lastly, something of great significance is that commonly available LLMs, they don't have access to non-public information, like the information about my company, like internal documents of my company. They don't have any information about that. So if I ask a question about Yarnit, whatever is it is giving me as a response, it is incorrect. It's not accurate. So what does that mean? Does that mean we should dismiss the technology? If only we could overcome this limitation. uh, it's actually quite simple. If LLM is a copywriter but they don't really know about my company specifically, I can tell them about my company, and they can come up with a very accurate, engaging piece of content. Here I'm giving the LLM a very short snippet about Yarnit's idea generator, and it creates a blog post that is almost ready. If you look at the blog post on the left, where it is articulate, very well structured, but it does not have good information or correct information. When I give it that information in the blog on the right hand side, it gives me a very decent blog. Now, this particular novel technique is called retrieval augmented generation. And this is arguably the most talked about technique in the generative AI domain because it enables the use of data. Now, this is a basic idea behind retrieval augmented generation. We can see that an LLM can be guided to give more contextually accurate responses with data. But how do we sustain such a behavior? I can't search for information every single time and give it to the LLM. So the answer to that is to create a memory for the LLM, a memory that can store all the pertinent information coming from different sources. This information that can be retrieved whenever we ask the LLM to generate content for any topic. For this purpose, we create sort of a knowledge hub. So anytime we give the LLM the task to write content on a certain idea that we have in mind, it'll go look in the knowledge hub, find out information about that topic, and then give it to the LLM, and LLM will start generating content that is accurate and contextual. What we have done very simplistically is that we have enabled our copywriter, the LLM, with vast knowledge about our company. We've given it access to the internet and other sources of data. And this information can then be searched for accurate and up to date information. This, my friends, is how technology is solving for the use of data in generative AI. Having said that, there are still some questions that we should focus on. Questions like, how good are these sources of information? How good is the structure in which this information is stored in this so called knowledge hub? Is it being searched with precision? Is the right piece of information being fetched? Is the LLM really taking the information into account? Or is it still hallucinating, cooking up facts? Like the generative AI technology in general, this technique is also evolving at a very rapid pace. There are several layers of interventions that are being done, and these layers are at different places in storing information, in fetching the right information, reshaping the information after it is fetched. These are called pre-retrieval, retrieval, post-retrieval stages, and all of this is aimed at providing the precise and accurate context to the language models. Now, I won't get into too much details of these interventions, but one cutting edge technique that I want to focus on is what you see on the right hand side of your screen. It involves something called knowledge graphs. What are knowledge graphs? Knowledge graphs are tools or structures that store entities and their relationships. Now, what does that mean? Let me continue with the example of Yarnit's idea generator. A knowledge graph can tell me a lot about idea generator. It can tell me that idea generator is a feature of Yarnit app. It can also tell me that there is a user of Yarnit who is the chief marketing officer at a company, and she has written a testimonial about the idea generation. This is valuable piece of information, and it might be present in different documents, disparate sources. But using RAG on these knowledge graphs can not just give me information about the entity, the idea generation, but also all the information that is related to the entity. So, what has this done? This has given my copywriter, the LLM, a much better memory and the nuance to make connections. And having provided the LLM with this deeper context, it can generate outputs that are richer and more meaningful to the viewer. uh, I can show you an example. Like, if all this information in the next slide is passed to the LLM, then what you see as an article on the right hand side is not just simply stating the facts. It is also giving perspectives. It is also telling that a company is already using idea generator, so it becomes more like a case study than just simply writing text. So to summarize, if I think of the AI model, the LLM, as a copywriter who has some knowledge and expertise in writing, with RAG I have enhanced the memory of this copywriter. And with knowledge graphs, I have also given it the ability to make connections so that it can process nuanced information that may be specific to your company, to your customers, and that results in content that is personalized to you and your audience. So that's what this technique is all about. But finally, I'd like to end this section with the possibilities that exist in the near term. And like any technology, RAG is not a foolproof system. There are challenges with RAG, especially when we are thinking scale. We still must be able to guide the system. The information, what do I mean by that? Is that information needed for a blog may be very different from what is needed for a tweet, is very different from what is needed for a case study. There may be multiple documents that are speaking about the same topic, and you as the decision maker must still think and make that decision, like what document to use, is this the information, the right information? To answer all of this, what lies ahead of us is giving this ability of reasoning, planning, and decision making to the AI model. And this is the realm of autonomous AI agents that we are entering. We at Yarnit have a firm belief that AI agents will lead us into the future. And we'll be speaking more about these in our upcoming webinars. So do make sure that you watch this space for more. Okay. I have talked a lot about technique, technology, but how is this turning into reality? To speak more on that, I'll hand over the session to Akash, who will tell us how Yarnit looks at data specifically and drives these content outcomes. Akash, come on, man, show it to us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Abhinav. This was really an insightful session. And I think for our audience, it provided a lot of clarity on the terms like RAG, the knowledge graphs, right? Because and it gives a perspective of how they are evolving in this Gen AI landscape, right? Okay, so let's dive more into the same topic and let's carry it forward to understand, because there are so many marketers and content creators right now in the webinar. So let's see how they can take advantage of technologies like these and use it for their content generation, right? So on Yarnet, so we are saying like we can fulfill this particular promise of creating hyper personalized content uh, by giving the injection of three different threads which are like very strong in their area, and to spin our yarn which is like all enriched with the content creation, right? So let's dive into this and understand. So the first thread which is there, which is for the internal data. And as we have been talking about, like the internal data is something like which is core to the company. You have been creating it for years. It could be about the product, it could be about your services, your offerings, your customer profiles, and everything. The second important thread is the external data. Now, this external data is something which experts have created in the form of research, the reports, syndicated databases. And the third thing which comes in is the monitoring data. Now, monitoring is an important pillar because most often it's been forgotten, but how you interact with the platforms, can the platforms learn from it, and how once you publish the content to the outside world, what happens to that content. So learning from all these three things, we spin the yarn so that you create the enriched stories, right? So how to do that on the platform? So here's a little bit glimpse. On the platform, we are launching Brand Hub. Now, this is an improved version of our previous, which is called Personality. Now it is enriched with the visual guidelines. Now, when we talk about the visual guidelines, this is the area where you can store how the brand visually communicate. What are your design templates, what are your fonts, the kind of styling you use, logos, and all these assets. The second is the writing guidelines. So as we have seen, like it's not always black and white, just calling it my tone is from formal or I do write the casual things, but it's a complicated science and it's a mix of all in varying depths. So the platform can decode the science for you. You just need to upload a few things in terms of like what your copy looks like, and the platform will do the rest for you. The third important section on the platform is the brand information. And this is where you store all the information about who you serve to, what are your USPs, your core propositions, your customer profiles, and so on. And the next piece is the brand offering. So no brand is complete without their services or your offerings, right? So you can upload all the recent documents there. And the last, which is the most important, is the legacy data. Over the years, all of us have been creating a lot of data for our corporate, and often because of the huge amount of content which gets generated on a, annual basis or a daily basis, this data is being often overlooked. Now, can we make sense out of this data? Because this data has got a huge potential. Now, what do we do after we combine all these details, right? So we on the platform combine all of these so that it's available for you at the right moment when you're generating content, depending upon your topic and depending upon what you're trying to create. The platform, through the knowledge graph and the reg capabilities, and I'm sure by now you have understood these terms. So all of these have been pulled together to give you the right set of information at the right time, right? So let me give you a glimpse about, like, before we go further, how does these things look onto the platform. And it's a sneak peek on the feature. It's not out yet, and it's only available for the select customers from for which we are doing the beta testing, and it would be out there soon, right? So if you look into these platforms, this is the glimpse of how you can store the brand personality, brand voice, knowledge hub, your brand templates, which is the visual guidelines, right? So you have an area where you can store all these details. Plus, you can also store your repositories and the system, and you don't have to type any of these things. The system automatically fetches it on the basis of your company assets. It could be a URL or a document which you upload, and let the categorization, the segmentation, be the job for the platform, right? So at this moment, I'll go back. Now, once we have identified all of these, what will happen? So the magic will happen, and the content which you'll be getting would not be just vanilla, it would be brand aligned, on point, and contextual, right? So it's a great thing. But is it the best thing? Not yet, because we are missing out on the external data. So once we feed in the external data in the real time, and when we say the external data, we are meaning the trusted databases, not just any data, but the ones which have been created from expertise with multiple rounds of verification. It is in the form of research reports, studies, and scientific data. So we have the repository of all these resources on the platform. Now, second thing is the trends data. Now, depending upon how your customers' interest and audience interest are evolving, can we get those kind of a data? Again, this is also available on the platform. And finally, the serve data. So depending upon how the related post form for the kind of content you are creating, how related posts of those are how performing on the organically on the search engines, right? So we follow the structure, the format, and the keywords which they are quoting, and bring it all together as a knowledge, so that finally the content which you are generating through fine-tuned language models and with the help of RAG. Now, with this, the outcome is now your content, along with what you have done from the brand guidelines, this is now filled with the latest information. Now it is much more SEO qualified. It is highly informative, and because of the trusted sources, it is now credible, right? So now this looks like a great story. Now I have all my brand information, which Ellen didn't have. I also have the external information. Now my content is bang on, right? Now, it still is lacking a one important thing, and this is the monitoring data. And when I say the monitoring data, this is the third layer, and it is available in the form of feedback. So you don't have to do anything on the platform. You keep using it. The kind of content you are creating, the kind of interactions you are making, the feedbacks you are giving, and the kind of modifications you are doing on the platform while creating a project, kind of edits and everything, the platform is always in a learning mode, which means over a period of time the platform will be self-sufficient to enable all those edits, all those modifications that you have done will slowly go less. So the platform is in learning mode, and everything would cater to your personalized outcomes, right? Now the next big important thing is this is all internal, right? The feedback collected. The big test for any of the content is when it reaches the market. So when you hit the social media, that's where the main test of the content comes in. So what happens? How your post is performing? Is it being received well by the audience or not? We capture all these sentiments, the analysis, the kind of interactions, engagements people are making, and then finally taking this as a feedback and trying to help you to create more such content which is aligned to your audience need, right? How does it happen? Again, capturing all these data behind the scenes so that you are not bombarded with a lot of and tons of data. All you just need to do is just sit back, relax, keep doing the work which you are doing, keep posting it on social media, the platform is in always in a learning mode. And then finally the content which you're getting is much more personalized, much more engaging, and now it has got the higher probability of performing better because it is now in alignment to your audience need, right? So this completes the entire story. So in a nutshell, from the platform, when you'll be creating, we'll be spinning these three threads for you to create a beautiful yarn of a content, which if you would have generated from core vanilla content creation platforms, it would be just a vanilla content. But from Yarnet, now the content would be brand aligned, on point, contextual, would perform better, has got a higher range of information. It would be much more SEO qualified. It would be personalized with latest information. It would be engaging to the audience which you are catering, and because of the sources, it is credible now, right? So all this will happen on the platform, and the main question which I'm assuming like a lot of you would ask, like how soon we can start using these features on the platform, right? So stay tuned till the end of this webinar, because we're going to reveal a couple of dates to you. And that's it. And please keep dropping your questions if you have any doubts on the platform, on this, on the chats, and we'll keep addressing, right? So I'll from here onwards, I'm passing it to the Jyotima, so he'll take it forward. And Jyotima, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Akash. Thanks for summarizing Yanit and what the good things that we do. Folks, we have had quite a session, right, where we started with discussing the challenges, how data can solve for it. And if you look at, broadly, a quick summary of the entire session, because we started discussing problem, then we got into a geek mode, and then, Akash kind of closed it into, you know, how Yanit is fulfilling some of the commitments that we are talking about. But just to sort of summarize, if you look at data is gold, will remain gold, and it has to be paired with AI to get the best out of it, right? There are different data sources, that we must use, whether it is your internal information, external information, and there are broadly two things. Look, as in one, you're adding context, and two, you're adding accuracy of the information that you're creating, right? Now, that being said, if you see what has happened really in the last 12 months, and literally summarizing what Abhinav just did, we have moved from LLM, their inherent knowledge and their capability to generate content, to now, RAG, which is my ability to sort of support that with some information, its ability to understand it, going to knowledge graphs and RAG, where now it can create those relationships, find the knowledge for you, right? Give you at the point of creation, so that you don't have to rely on the memory that you have, right? And the last one is where the future is, where it can start looking at reasoning, look at the decision ambiguities that we have as marketeers, content creators, and find the right nugget of information to be used for content creation, right? It's almost like taking a new person in your marketing team, right? They may have all the good skills, but they still need to understand your domain, your brand, your customers. And all you're doing is making their life simple, right? By giving them information slowly, then giving them more power so that they can communicate around the team, getting them more knowledge. And then finally, you're helping them sort of create contextual content. As to what Yarnet and we are doing, of course, we want to sort of be on top of this technology curve, and there are plenty of good things coming up. The launch that Akash was talking about is happening in the first week of June. So please stay tuned and do share your feedback. I know there are a couple of questions, that we have on our comment section. I know it's a Friday evening. A lot of you may have dinner plan, date plans. I don't want to keep you with this webinar, but let us take a few questions, folks. Um, uh, there is a question on. Let's go one by one. Uh, right. There is a question on what's the best. Can you? What is the? Let me read out the question. Could you please suggest what's the best optimal way to create website content and blog content using AI? I think you might have had the answer already, looking at what we are doing and how, what data sets to use. But if you look at the purpose of a website, of course, it is to showcase, your capabilities as a product, and therefore it has to have all the understanding of your, product or service. and two, it should show up the moment somebody is searching. So the first thing that we need to start off is to understand how your customer would discover you. What are those right keywords, right? You need to sort of have in your page with which you become more discoverable, right? And the second piece is then giving that context about your product and service. Now, the two or three key sources that we have seen our customers use, of course, SEO research and keyword research to come up with the right keywords. Then, organize their knowledge, pair it with the AI, and then come and generate the content for the website. The only missing piece here would be, is the AI system trained to create website content? Right now, of course, we can try that with open source tools as well, but then there are proprietary tools which have been trained, even fine-tuned, to understand how website content should be written, where you have a banner, you have your core features, you have the value proposition, and with a testimonial, have footer notes, so on and so forth. There are certain ways certain content need to be created, and just be sure that the tools that you're using have that knowledge and understand. Yeah. uh, Abhinav, I think there's a question on LLM. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, before that, I want to answer Raghavendra's question. Yarn, looks very promising. Can we create social graphics as well? Yes, definitely. There is somebody who's asking this a YouTube channel called Let's Go Digital. Is there any LLM or AI that creates content based on latest event? Yes, Yarnit does. You can go and check it out. In fact, the ChatGPT Pro version also is now, you can connect to the internet, and the RAG technique that we talked about uses the same technique to generate content. uh, Kaushik has asked, so do we consider CDP to knowledge graph to RAG to tailor personalized content? I think by CDP, if I'm not mistaken, it is customer data platform. Yes, that's a great way to look at it. From your customer data platform, you create a knowledge graph. You can use an LLM to create a knowledge graph. That's what graph RAG is all about. Then, using RAG, you can actually create content that is based on your personal, like an individual customer or a customer segment's need. uh, Great. Is there any other question? Somebody, Sanjay has asked, would like to try Yarnet. Is it all available, the use cases with Yarnet? Yes, there are hundreds of use cases on Yarnet. Am I saying too much? Is it 100? What is the very
The 70 odd use cases that we
70
have.
odd use
Uh,
cases?
but I would certainly encourage all of you to test out the new feature, new version that will be available first week of June, and you'll find a lot of things that we discussed today. Right. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and with that being said, I think so. When we talk about the number of use cases, it's an ever evolving thing. So in the starting, we have like 30 use cases. Now we have reached that time where we have 70 plus use cases, and every month for the audience, like every month, we are releasing a couple of more, which is in align to their needs. And we have been receiving a lot of feedbacks from customers. Do this, do that. So a lot of things are in the roadmap. Please drop a note in case if you want to see something exciting which is not there already, and we'll put it into our roadmap.
Yeah. I think there's a question from Suraj, which is, if LLMs are taking over Google's market share, how do we ensure AI is picking up info we want it to show? Um, yeah, quick thought on that, Suraj. Look, as in all these LLMs are definitely getting updates where they are being fed more recent knowledge, so they have that information. But we cannot also sort of dissociate the fact that sometimes, or at times rather, it's not able to follow the exact instruction or fetch the right information. It may hallucinate. It's always good to pair it with the data source, right? That you have enough and many data sources, whether it being news data sources, social event data sources, which you can plug with the AI engine to get the best and the latest information for your content.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, folks. I know, like I said, it's a Friday evening. Some of you who are based out of India, we have a semi-final to watch. So I don't want to hold you any longer. Thank you again for joining us, and hope you have a lovely evening. All the best. Bye. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for staying with us.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.